Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that. Just want to make
That's
sure
okay.
we got this for posterity. All right.
That's all right. So first, want to also thank ICABA, International Career and Business Alliance, for providing the platform for these webinars. If you are not familiar with ICABA, I encourage you to go to icabaworld.com, check out the organization. It's a fantastic organization full of educational, informational, and networking information. So without further ado, Keith and I are going to kick off that family meeting and talk to y'all about some estate planning and what that looks like. And I'm sure y'all all are looking at the picture there of, you know, the prayer before dinner. And I don't know, some of you may remember, some of you might even still have Sunday dinner. And so when it's funny, because when we were talking about planning for this webinar, all of these movies came to mind. And so towards the end, we're going to do a couple of movie clips that are directly related to everything that we're talking about.
All right. Let me know if you see it go forward. It's a little delayed on mine. So. Okay.
Not moving.
It's not
There we
moving?
go. There it is.
Okay.
All right, so the family meeting, and we're going to make this as interactive as possible. There's not a whole lot of people on here, so that helps to allow us to be interactive. So if you have any questions, any comments, oh, that happened to me, just chime in, because the more conversation we have, and we can make it kind of like an actual family meeting. Yeah. And so what is a family meeting?
So the purpose of the family meeting is to share relevant information with family members. And when I read it, I'm thinking, what is relevant? Okay, so that's the first thing that everyone has to think through. And then of course, family members, then of course the question is, who does that include? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But the family meeting's purpose is to share information. And this will prevent, hopefully in there, surprises when you become incapacitated or pass away, and obviate disagreements and discord. So a lot of times we think this is probably going to come into play where during life, we want to emphasize this during life and potentially discussing things after death. Because a lot of times people think, okay, let's talk about who gets what after death, but we also, Shannon and I want to emphasize, particularly today, we're kind of doing a two-parter, things that need to talk about that will happen while someone's alive and potentially caring for somebody. And then of course, you can explain to everyone at the same time what guided your choices. So if you do it once, to someone in private conversation and don't tell everyone, they don't know what's coming from you versus coming from the other person. So you want to have that opportunity to explain to everyone at the same time.
Yeah, can everyone see at the bottom you have reaction screen? So if you can, I would love anyone that has ever had a family meeting, give me a thumbs up in the reactions. Excellent, Trina. Tanya. Okay, I'm not sure if the others of you don't have that screen available. Maybe some of you are driving. Please don't touch anything if you're driving.
We are not responsible.
No. So family meetings can take on all kinds of things, all kinds of scenarios, all kinds of situations. They can be about a variety of topics. They can be combined with a variety of topics. Like sometimes it's easier to do that combination so that, especially with children or adults who are not necessarily open and ready to have the deep-seated discussions, throw something else in there, like the basketball game and everything else. You don't have to stick to an agenda. That's part of what makes it great to have these meetings with family. The benefits of it are, one, you know what, there's no surprises in the end. If grandma has always said, if anything ever happens to me, don't use the towels in the closet, or if anything ever happens to me, son, you get my car. If those discussions are had in front of everybody as you go along, as life travels, it's not like one talk. It's kind of like raising children and having talks about the birds and the bees. You can't just have one talk because that's not going to do it. So it's the same thing when it comes to things like estate planning, having a series of talks so that there's no surprises. There's no question if you have these discussions when you are of sound mind and you're making decisions. I hope everyone knows that decision making is best done when you are not necessarily in an emergency situation. We make rash decisions in emergency situations. So having those discussions up front while you're able to make them rationally is much preferred. And as far as your choices go, if you can voice them while you are able to voice them, while you're living, while you can articulate them perfectly so that everyone understands, that is another fantastic benefit of having that family meeting. You want to add anything else to that, Keith?
No, I'm trying to get to the next slide, so let me know if you see it pop up.
Not just yet.
Oh. Okay.
All right, yep, there it is. All right, so who should participate? I know people come from very small families, people that come from very large families, people that come from blended families. Nowadays, the blended family is probably more traditional than the traditional family. So who should participate in those meetings? That is a decision that should be made up front before things get hairy, before discussions turn in a direction that you don't want so-and-so to hear, because that just makes it more uncomfortable when you have to say, oh, could you leave the room? Or, oh, we shouldn't have been having this meeting with you here anyway, or the arguments ensue at that point, it's too late. So who should participate?
Yes, and we have a point here, try not to leave particular people out of the meeting. You know, if you have 5 kids and you got that problem child, leaving that child out might seem that the meeting will flow better, but you might actually create issues down the road. And Shannon could tell you that, especially with when it comes to probate matters, that's asking for a will contest or somebody to challenge things, because if they weren't part of something, they're going to assume, and they don't get what they, you know, either think they were supposed to get or what their heart thinks that they want. That gives them every incentive, especially if they weren't a part of the meeting, to challenge things later.
Right, right. If
So
you're not ready to invite everyone, don't. Yeah, go ahead.
If you're not ready to invite everyone, you may not be ready yet to have that meeting emotionally. Yeah, you know what you want, but you're just not ready yet to put yourself in that situation. But and you know, time is always you know, unsure of how much you have. So sometimes you have to just, as to say, bite the bullet and go through those uncomfortable times, because you know, these conversations need to happen.
Right, right. And deciding whether to involve spouses or significant others of adult children is key, because different families have different dynamics. Every individual has a different thought in their mind on how they want the meeting to go and who they want to know what. Sometimes, yes, it is a good idea to involve those in-laws so that they hear everything at the same time as the children. That gives you a deeper sounding board, and it gives you more credence when it comes to, well, I was there, I heard the meeting, this is what she said. I was there, we all heard the same thing at the same time. However, if you want to keep it more involved with just the nuclear family, not extended family, not spouses, not significant others, then make that known ahead of time, so that, again, you know, somebody's feelings could be hurt, but you would rather somebody's feelings being hurt because they're not in the meeting than it being much worse down the line because they were in the meeting, or vice versa. You know, every family dynamic is different. No two families look exactly alike. So you know your people, you know your desires and wishes, handle it accordingly.
And the last two are kind of tied together. We talk about family meetings sometimes, and you kind of could take 2 different forms. You could have just the family, as we talk, and invite particular people, or you can bring the professionals in if you're going to do something really that you feel needs to be explained, or maybe something that people don't understand exactly what you're trying to do. Some of these instruments that we use, especially if you're doing trust, might be a little complicated, and people need to understand some things and may need to have the opportunity to ask questions. But I will say this, I don't know how Shannon feels about this. If you're going to invite me, I can tell you, you're going to not do that on a holiday, because I'm not coming to your house on Thanksgiving, okay? So if you invite the professional team, you're probably going to need to do that at a special situation that's not at the holiday gathering, because we have families too, and we're going to be at home. So just for the practical, if you want to have the entire attorney team and financial advisor and all that, that's probably going to be a non-holiday meeting. But,
right.
you know,
But having the discussion about, hey, I'm looking at this, this, and this. We need to have a family meeting, and there's these group of professionals that we want to bring in. So having that discussion about it at the holidays, at Sunday dinner, at whatever, when you have it, it's fine. Because again, that way nobody is surprised down the line when that meeting is scheduled. And it also allows everyone to feel like they have some participation and some ownership in it. If they can say yes or no to, you know, oh, there's going to be an attorney there. Okay, great. That also lends to the seriousness of the information that you are divulging. Yeah, we can all sit around and joke and laugh about things all the time, which many people do. However, getting to the meat and bones and the seriousness of the discussion is sometimes better served having professionals involved. Also, we can serve as a neutral party. You know, families, we can diffuse those dynamics that so oftentimes get in the way of having the discussion. And when you have a professional who is an expert in what they're talking about in the topic, then that helps diffuse it, because you know, you've brought somebody outside of the family in. We have our own families that, I'm speaking just for myself, we have to have these meetings as well. We are not immune from it by any stretch of the imagination, but absolutely participation is key, and it allows everyone to have some buy off to the information.
so when should this meeting occur? Okay, so we have talked about possibly doing things at a certain time, but these topics should be discussed frequently, and definitely if you can start that conversation, like Shannon said, and just have it be a constant thing that you have to open those lines of communication, that's the best approach, where you can not make it just a one-time event, where you can kind of have these things, because people, for practical purposes, they may not remember what you, if you just have a one-time thing, they might not remember everything you talked about. So you probably want to have that kind of constant communication where you can go forward and talk about things from time to time.
Yeah, the best time to call for a meeting is when everyone, or even if you're just talking about planning for one particular person, when that person is healthy and able to express their wishes, that is the best time to have the meeting. Don't wait until there's a crisis that requires immediate intervention or an emergency situation, because one, we don't make the best decisions in emergency situations, and two, when there's a crisis, that means it has to be handled like right now. And some of these things aren't the best at right now handling, because it requires other things to be in place already. And so the best time is when everyone is healthy and able to express themselves. Don't wait until there's an emergency situation.
And just sometimes you might have certain cues because you're around that person and you can notice a change in their abilities or sometimes behaviors. And Shannon and we as estate planning attorneys, we get into a situation many times. We had this, if you caught our webinars on the power of attorney, we can't give a family member a power of attorney over someone if they're not competent. So we have to, what we really do is have the person come in and give a power of attorney to someone else. So they have to be able to do that. So if you wait too long, if you see these changes, if you see forgetfulness and other difficulties, and then you kind of not comfortable, deciding to move forward, if you wait too long, then you may miss that opportunity to have these discussions and also to get some of these documents in place, because we are kind of have our hands tied behind our backs if the person has gone too far in a decline situation.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that, of a case I have right now where client is has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and her family at this point is trying to get guardianship of her, which is where they make decisions with regard to her healthcare, and conservatorship, which is where they make decisions with regard to her finances and legal issues. And several of them, that she has 4 children. And I've spoken with each one of them individually, and they have all said, without knowing I talked to the other, man, mom always talked about needing to get this stuff in order, and now it's too late. I wish we had done something, she always talked about it. I wish we had done something while we could have. And, now they're having to ask the court for permission, whereas if they had had that family meeting and put everything in order ahead of time, it would be a totally different dynamic right now.
Okay, so where can it be held? And you should try to have a place that can make as many family members welcome as possible. Obviously family dynamics will play into that, because Shannon said sometimes they're blended families, sometimes there's very large families, people not everybody gets along. So if you're going to call a family meeting, that's going to depend, that location may need to be in somebody's home for some families, and some other families, it may need to be in a neutral place like an attorney's office. So, you definitely need to kind of really know who gets along with what and who's able to coexist with others in certain situations. And that's not something we can answer for you. So, it's a lot of this family meeting is layered on the family dynamics, and only you know that.
Right. The interesting part about this is, Keith is right. Bottom line, your family more than anyone else does, and the dynamics, and John and Joe don't get along. Don't bring John to Joe's house. Like, you know that. And a lot of times, especially in our communities, we like to stir the pot. Well, when it is a discussion that is as important as estate planning, as important as elder care, as important as what are we going to do when mom and dad get older, stirring the pot is not going to help, because then people are not comfortable having the discussion. It's funny, because I think about when Aretha Franklin died a few years ago, and my son was a preteen, and he came running into the kitchen about Aretha Franklin died, and they're saying she didn't have a will. And all that did was open up the discussion. That started a family meeting. It was inadvertent, right? It wasn't planned or anything, but it started a discussion. So any opportunity that you can get to start those discussions, do it. And then it makes, where should the meeting be held? When you have a full-blown meeting, it makes it easier, because you've already opened up the door. Everyone knows it's coming, and there's no surprises. Especially if you're talking about parents and siblings, having those discussions ahead of time so that no one is surprised. Right. Sometimes families still have Sunday dinner. Okay, well, what do you talk about at Sunday dinner? Everything but the important things. And so, just make it a point. All right, this Sunday, we're going to talk about everything but the important things, but we're also going to talk about the important things. So, if that dinner is held at mom and dad's house, fantastic. If it's held at the restaurant and then everyone goes to the park after, fantastic. Whatever works for your family. And again, I can't not stress this enough, and I'm sure Keith would agree. No two families are alike. Absolutely. Not even with siblings. The nuclear family, once siblings grow off and they have their own families, those two families don't function exactly alike. And another part about having these family meetings and where it should be held is, you don't know what happens in other people's homes when you're not there. So, if you show up at Sister Lynn's house for the family meeting and Sister Lynn seems uncomfortable or something's going on, maybe we want to revisit this. Maybe now is not a good time. So pick up on all those context clues leading up to the meeting and then at the meeting, and where you decide to have, if where it's going to be held turns into an argument beyond arguments, revisit the issue altogether.
And I was thinking, sometimes people might pick, say, mom or dad's house because it's emotionally it tugs at the heart and everyone's comfortable there. But that may actually not be the right place because it's so comfortable and so emotional. You might need some place maybe neutral, like the restaurant or the library, where everyone can kind of have, especially if that is the subject of what you're trying to discuss, right? If you want that house to not go to everybody or only go to certain people, meeting in the house might be a powder cake, right? So you might want to specifically not meet at the house if the house is the subject of what you're trying to discuss. So you kind of want to think through some of that logistically and say, well, is this going to be a problem? Maybe and people tend to probably act a little better if they're in public. So maybe a restaurant, they're not going to show out like they might at home. So, we have to do the practical when we think about some of this stuff.
Yeah. And make sure that people don't think it's an intervention. Because, people get automatically defensive when they feel like they're being drawn into something that they don't want to participate in, or when they don't know what's going on, or they don't know what the topic of discussion is going to be. Then they will be defensive about it, generally speaking. I'm not talking about everyone, but generally speaking, when people don't know what's going on, they shy away. So, make it known. Don't beat around the bush about it.
All right. So we were talking about having two of these. So we didn't know, and when we talked about, Shannon and I talked about getting together. So, well, are we going to talk about having like the life discussion in one meeting and then the death in another, or are they going to do everything in one meeting and then just kind of come back the next time? So kind of like the families themselves will change where and how you meet and all that. You might have different discussions, one in one meeting and one in the other, maybe have both and just, introduce in one meeting and in another, but you want to get those discussions of the elder years, or where is someone going to stay? Who's going to take care of somebody? Is someone going to move into one person's house and the other one's going to exist? Or is mom or dad going to move out of state or stay in state and someone's going to move in with them? These kind of things are just as important as those after death discussions, which involve who gets what. But before you get there, you have to talk about those elder years, because those can damage relationships also if someone feels that they were doing too much and no one else is participating and all those things. So the way we've kind of set it up is we'll talk about the elder years this time, and then the next part in December, we'll really talk about the after death piece. But you can kind of set your meeting up the way you want with your family.
Right. Yeah.
So with the elder years, we have kind of thought about 4 different kind of areas of discussion. The medical, I don't know about your family, but a lot of times we don't talk about a lot of these topics. And, if you have a medical condition, you may not really want to discuss where you're at. My mom passed away 2 years ago, and I know that she kept her condition from me until, she was stage 4. And I was like, well, why didn't you say anything? But, some people just don't want to worry other family members, so they keep these conditions to themselves. So part of the discussion beyond the financial and the legal, which we'll talk about, is just telling people, this is where I'm at. I'm feeling this way, or the doctors say this, and just keep everyone you don't want speculation about what they kind of probably notice things about you, even if you didn't say anything, but you have to kind of fill them in so there's no guessing and no, talk behind your back, and just let everyone know where everything is at.
Yeah. The financial part about it, a lot of times we don't want anyone to know anything with regard to our finances. we are typically quite private when it comes to that, even probably more so with the finances than medical, which is quite interesting. But, you know, getting it out there, people need to know it's expensive. Growing old is expensive, right? The elder years, you have so much to think about and plan for and prepare for, and budgeting and cost assessment and everything above and beyond that goes into just regular everyday life. It's actually complicated when it gets to the elder years if you have not properly discussed it, if you have not properly planned for it. So the financial aspect of it can be quite a daunting task that needs to be addressed. You cannot stick your head in the sand and act like it's not going to happen.
And then, of course, because we're attorneys, we're particularly concerned about the legal documents, the power of attorney, in particular, advance directive. These are documents that help you while you're alive to help someone make decisions if they're not able to do them themselves. You can have trust, whether revocable or irrevocable, that help manage someone's money in case they aren't able to manage their affairs. But this area is critical to coordinate, because you don't want someone to say verbally, I want you to do this for me, but the paperwork's not in place. Or, you know, if you say, you know, hey, I want you to make any decisions for me, and then, you know, you put in the document that all three of them are co-agents, and then they're, you know, butting heads, and you really wanted one person to make decisions. So coordinate your documents with what you discuss. And that's important for also that discussion to happen, where sometimes those uncomfortable discussions, because Shannon can tell you that agents may not be who the person thinks that they should be. Sometimes the spouse thinks we've heard from her, she said sometimes the spouse thinks that they're going to be that agent, and then the person's like, I don't think you're the right person, honey. And that's the reality, and you got to have that uncomfortable discussion. But it's better to do that early and make sure your documents are in line with that.
Yeah, another something with that. A lot of times we fall into the, oh, hey, baby, I need you to come go to the bank with me so that they'll know who you are if anything happens. Well, okay, introducing whoever it is to the banker, that's all nice and well and good. But if something happens, that banker is still going to want to see the legal document that says that now they can come in there and handle things for you in your place. So, you know, relationships are phenomenal and fantastic. However, legally, that relationship is going to be nothing if you don't have the document in place to back it up. And living arrangements. So we all have those discussions about, oh, well, when I get old, I want somebody to come in the house and care for me. Great, have that discussion and talk about having the paperwork in place and how it's going to be paid for and what that's going to look like. Or oh, they built this really nice facility down the street. It's for a senior community. I would like to live there. Okay, put it in writing, have the discussion so that everyone knows. If you want your 3 children to rotate taking care of you, put it in writing, make sure everyone knows, make sure everyone understands, make sure that everyone understands what taking care of you means and what that looks like. Does that mean you're going to be in one person's home during the day, another person's home at night, another person's home on the weekends? What does that look like? So that people are not overwhelmed, people are not overworked, people are not underappreciated. Because let's face it, we all, even with family, can feel unappreciated for just doing what we feel is the right thing to do. And what we feel is the right thing to do isn't always what someone else thinks is the right thing to do. So again, having that discussion, putting it all out there. I really like the picture on this one because it looks like the family reunion. And family reunions, great place to have that family meeting, right? A lot of, well, pre-COVID anyway, we'd have the family reunion that starts on Friday night and ends on Sunday with a business meeting. Okay, fantastic. Throw in the estate planning, throw in the elder care, throw all of it into a meeting. You make it a breakout session. Keith and I would love to come and present at those. So absolutely. You don't have to have a large gathering. You don't have to have an actual meeting, but having the discussion is key. I'm going to pause right here before we go into this. Is there any questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat. No questions? All right, so when it comes to medical, oftentimes we don't have the discussion until it's too late. And when it's too late to have the discussion. You can't at that point do anything about it. So I want to share a little clip from a movie that I'm sure many of you have seen or heard about.
This is your mass.
My mass?
Your tumor. And this, and this, and this. I'm sorry, Georgia, but the virus has caused a very advanced case of Lampington's lesions.
Okay, well, exactly what does that mean, Lampington's lesions?
And Dr. Gupta hasn't told you anything about this, right?
Well, I tried.
Thanks. Without treatment, it's terminal.
What? Like I'm gonna die?
I'm very, very sorry.
But I feel fine. I feel great. I just finished a fat flush and...
No dizziness or fainting?
No, I got a tiny bump on my head, that's all.
It's diabolical. Such a sneaky disease. I'm afraid, in your condition, you've got about 3 weeks to live.
What? I got 3 weeks to live? Are you shitting me?
4 on the outside. I'm sorry.
You're sorry? Well, I'm sorry. I can't accept that.
Then I think you should see Catherine Lenz.
Okay, fine. That's what I'm talking about. Catherine Lenz, okay. Is that the brain specialist?
No, she's your HMO administrator.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there. So Catherine Lenz, the HMO administrator, that's insurance. So this little clip covers the medical, because now she has a perceived medical condition. It covers the finances of it, and it covers the emotional of it. And I think that was it. But the point of this clip and why I chose this one, I'm not sure if anyone has seen this movie or not, but what happened after this was she went off and she spent all of her money. She went on a vacation of a lifetime, and then come to find out she wasn't dying. So now she had spent everything and had nothing left. So again, having these discussions, if I'm ever diagnosed with a terminal condition, this is what I want to happen. If I'm ever diagnosed with X, this is what I want to happen. So making sure that everyone is on the same page with regard to treatment and what you want that to look like.
And just for the estate planning, the legal piece, just in case people aren't aware, we did that webinar on advanced directives. She would be the perfect candidate if it was really the case that she had 3 weeks to live, to first make sure she had that advanced directive in place, because if her health declines that quickly, she should have an agent appointed to make those decisions for her. And I don't know what part of the country people in, but usually you're going to have a form that's particular to your state that you want to fill out, that the doctors and other staff know what that person's wishes are.
Right. Right. So the next clip is from another meeting another movie that I'm sure most of you have seen. It's quite a popular movie. This one is The Bucket List.
What are you doing? What is this? Come on, give it back. What is it? Give it back. It's on the floor. I didn't know it was a state secret. My freshman philosophy professor assigned this exercise in forward thinking. He called it a bucket list. We were supposed to make a list of all the things we wanted to do in our lives before we... Kick the bucket. Cutesy. Anyway, I wrote down things like make $1 million, first black president, young man's wishes. I was gonna redo the list, but then... Help a complete stranger for the good. Laugh until I cry.
Not to be judgmental, but this is extremely weak.
Well, it's pointless now.
I would argue the exact opposite. All right, that's it.
What are you doing?
Little rewrite, that's all. I mean, don't you want to go out with some balls, guns blazing, have a little fun?
It was not supposed to be about guns blazing or anything like that. You're missing the point.
What the hell is witness something majestic?
Have you ever been to the Himalayas?
Drive a Mustang Shelby, not bad. I got one, all right. How about skydiving? Now we're on to something.
We're onto something?
Uh-huh.
Let me see that. Come on.
Come in.
Kiss the most beautiful girl in the world? How do you propose doing that?
Volume.
So that one, I want to point out the funny thing, he said, we're onto something. You know, sometimes it's not about what we want, it's about what that individual person wants. And so making sure you fall in line with what their wishes would be and their desires would be, and listening to it. People have their own unique ways of telling you things. If somebody is always talking about, oh, I would really like to so-and-so. Okay, listen to that. And, you know, sometimes it's not putting it in writing on a list for everyone to see, but it is making your wishes known while you're able to do so, so that when you say, oh, you know, I think I really want to do so-and-so, they're not saying, oh, you just old and senile, right? No, if you've been saying it and you have been saying it and been saying it, I can't, you know, reiterate, at least people know. And so when is a good time to let people know? As life goes, right? Don't wait though, because what is that, the name of that soap opera? As the World Turns. You know, as the world turns, it's going to happen. And the days of your life will be gone before you know it, right? And then you'll be talking about, oh, all my children knew this. Well, no, maybe they didn't. And I always think about soap operas and how dramatic they are. But if you really think about it in terms of family dynamics and everything that goes on, they were right spot on. And so don't let your life be a soap opera without you being the number one character in it. Right.
And I like that clip too, because he read his list and then he kind of basically disrespected his list, right? And that could probably happen in a family meeting. He said, I want this to happen. And someone's like, why do you want that? Why do you like, and you know, so you want to make sure that if you're going to have these meetings, you know, the underlying theme should be respect for what each person's contributions or thoughts are, because you don't want someone to, you know, put out what they want and other people are like, we're not going to follow that, or, you know, I don't like that, or whatever, you know. Like if that meeting is about what that person wants, their feelings should take precedence, and then, you know, you might have to take a back seat, and everyone agrees that, look, you know, this is what we're going to do, even if it's not necessarily what we want, we would do ourselves. So, you know, you have to kind of talk about how you're going to conduct the meeting and how things, you know, and maybe have some, you know, parliamentarian there kind of say, hey, this is, you know, let's keep some order. This is what the person says, so let's respect that.
Right. And that goes to the next part where we're going to talk about. We talked about the medical, and the next thing was going to be the legal issues. So having all of those legal documents in place that legally let people know what your plans are, what your wishes, what your desires would be. And so, for instance, I can't tell you how many times I've had a potential client say, well, you know, I want to be cremated, but I know so-and-so doesn't like that. If that's what you want, then you put it in the documents so that it will happen. You know for sure it's not going to happen if you don't have it in the documents. If you don't have a document to say your wishes. So again, those are great times. Hash it out. You know, don't let that family meeting deter you from what you want. People know what they want. You know, I had a client who rode motorcycles and wanted to be buried on his motorcycle. And, you know, people laughed and said, oh, that's so weird. But that's what he wanted. we have to respect people's wishes. We don't always have to agree with them. As a matter of fact, most of the time we don't agree with them, right? That's why we have to have these meetings, so that you can air all that out and hash that out while you have time, while people are in their right minds, and while people can effectively express that. I want to go back to the Queen Latifah clip. She thought all of a sudden she had 3 weeks to live. And I don't know if any of you or all of you have seen that movie, but she went on a trip to, I think, Switzerland or somewhere, and she just blew everything that she had. She quit her job and everything, which is not uncommon for what many people would do if they think they have 3 weeks to live. So think about, I often tell people, think about estate planning as, what would you want your life to look like if you had to hand somebody a box full of pieces of your life? What would you want the picture to look like of the puzzle?
Right.
And putting that puzzle together for people ahead of time is great. You have those meetings, you talk about them ahead of time. And again, we've already said this, it's not just one meeting, it's a series of meetings. It's a series of discussions that you have over the course of time, so that everybody knows. I think about when my grandmother passed away, and at the time, we all were going back in the recesses of our minds and able to say, well, she always said this, and she always said that. And oh, now that makes sense why she said this. And well, she said this to me. Oh, she said the same thing to me, but she passed away without a will. We had to piece all of those things together. Whereas if we had all had those discussions, she was having those family meetings with us individually, right? Which was fine, because then it made it easier for all of us to come together collectively and say, this is what she wants, because she had put that picture together for us. It wasn't a one-time sit-down family meeting. It was, oh, I'm glad you're here this weekend. Let's talk about this. And oh, I'm glad so-and-so was here last week and we talked about this. And piecing it all together, it was easy, right? And the process that anyone has to go through when a loved one becomes incapacitated is challenging enough without having to deal with the business aspect of how to deal with that incapacity. So have it in place, put it all on the table ahead of time while you can.
And I want to mention also, I'm sure Shannon has this issue where someone comes into your office and they're trying to put the documents together and they're trying to decide who does what role. And a lot of times they're really unsure of who does what or who should they pick. But if you have these family meetings, you can kind of get feedback and kind of see if someone's receptive to what your ideas are. So if you needed you have 2 kids and you got an advanced directive and one kid seems like they're not really feeling what you're saying and the other one's on board and say, I understand, that's probably makes a decision for you who to appoint in your documents. So you might really want to have these meetings just for your own benefit of saying, you know what, I'm really not sure who to pick in each role. Oh, okay, once I had that meeting, it's a lot clearer now. Because you'll get a feeling of who's on board and who's really understanding and will respect what you want to do.
Right. There's another clip that we were going to show, but I don't think we're going to have time. But it's the clip from Soul Food, where where Terry was the one always giving money, and they were calling her that she said the ATM, asked Terry for money. And we have those discussions all of the time. There's always one person that's the responsible one. There's one that has the money. There's one that's the caring one. Like, people inadvertently step into certain roles, and they don't do it like overnight. It happens early in life and they grow in those roles. Believe me, when there's an emergency, when something happens, if you haven't planned for it, people are not going to deviate from that role they have always been in. They're just not. Don't think that if Johnny has never once taken you to the grocery store or done anything to help you, and now you, just because you name him as your power of attorney, he's going to do it when you become incapacitated. That document does not create miracles. So, and it's interesting, people, I've had people want us to be miracle workers. Well, who should we name? I can't answer those questions for people, but we can always address what happens in the interim. I see a hand raised.
Yes, Shannon, I had a question. This is Stacy. What is the age that they recognize that person being the power of attorney? Like, our daughter is over 18, but she's not 21. So how do we make that distinction if we want to appoint her as being the person in charge?
18 can be a power of attorney because 18-year-olds need to have their own power of attorney in place. You
Gotcha.
can no
Okay.
longer make decisions for them legally. They are of age at the age of 18.
Okay.
You can't make legal decisions for them. You can't make medical decisions for them anymore at that age. It's interesting you asked that. I don't know if there's any Grey's Anatomy fans on here, but last week's Grey's Anatomy touched on that exact issue. There was
Oh, wow.
an 18-year-old had been brought into the emergency room, had been to a party during COVID, and mom and dad rushed down to the emergency room and the doctors kept them at bay. Mom was like, he just turned 18 last week. And they were like, we don't care. He's 18. Cannot
Okay.
do this. So 18 is the age.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Yeah, I have a question. Just Raheem.
Okay.
How do I even get into this? So Keith already knows, like, my mom passed away some years ago, and recently my brother and dad passed away actually this year. So I'm not dealing with stuff for the immediate family. But for my mother-in-law, she's very stubborn. She's from Africa, and she's aging, and part of elder care. We're trying to have that conversation with her about getting her affairs in order. We're trying to get her to move down to Georgia. I was just up there in New York not too long ago, just getting her stuff, physically ready to move. But we're trying to get her affairs in order. And in reference to the family meeting, we need to have that family meeting. But I'm not sure how to address it from my perspective, because I'm very hands-on. I'm very technical. I'm an accountant, all that type of stuff. So I'm very, hands-on with that stuff, but I'm not really sure how to have that initial conversation that's not too in depth, but more on a surface level, just to try to get the ball rolling.
Great question. You want to address that, Keith?
Ooh, that's a hard one, because you're talking about someone who's not only resistant, but they're out of state. So you're trying to, if someone's in state, then you can probably just be in their presence and kind of like Shannon said, maybe you have you talk about something else, you're watching the game or whatever she likes, and while you're doing that activity, you can kind of bring it up. But if you're talking over the phone and you're not able to get in her physical presence, I would say you probably need to get someone else in the family involved, more of a one-to-one. You probably don't want to do a group thing, because that's going to just put the wall up, right? So you might want to pick the person that you think is she's most receptive to, probably just listening to the idea of it. But if you're trying to effect a move, that's going to really, from a legal point of view, involve potentially if she's not willing and you think that it's coming to that, that's going to potentially be that guardianship action, and then that's going to be a situation where you might need to do something against her wishes, so you don't want it to come to that. So you don't want, it's difficult to navigate. If you're seeing things are getting to a point where she's not willing to do something, but you think that there's a need, you may need to start talking amongst the other family members about doing something for her, even if she's not open to it. And that's sometimes, unfortunately, it does become a little adversarial if you're not able, if it comes to that. So emotionally, a lot of this is going to be emotional. You're going to have to prepare yourself that you might not be in store for some things that are, it's going to be some rough times. There's no way around some of this stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, she'll be down here for the Christmas holiday for a few weeks, if not a few months. And I was telling Addie, you need to get the power of attorney. You need to do this, because when my mother was diagnosed with cancer, it was like she had all her ducks in a row. It was like it was so easy, it was ridiculous. But with her, it's like she's resistant to having a power of attorney. I mean, she's almost 70. She's resistant to having a power of attorney. I know I'm not going to be able to see any of her financial documents, and I'm trying to get Addie to to like say, you need just get a power of attorney signed, because just in case she slips and fall in something, or the medical directive, just in case,
Yeah.
she needs to go to a hospital doctor, or you need to even speak to a doctor about a condition. Like,
Right.
we
And
need
I
to
was
get this
about to
in
say,
stuff.
with regard to that, it is very, it's a great idea to approach it very gingerly, and also approach it from the standpoint of, really just in case. What if something happens to you and we're not able to help? So when you approach it from that standpoint, put it on you. Don't put it on them. put it on you. If something happened to you, I would be worried sick if I couldn't do anything.
Yeah. All right.
Then it's not on them. You're putting it on you and making them think about it from a different, instead of thinking about it internally for themselves, they're thinking about the outward of how will people be able to handle this if that just in case happens.
Yeah, I gotta speak to my wife in reference approaching from that directive, because that makes sense.
Mhm.
Makes sense.
All
Thanks.
right, I'm answering a couple of questions in the chat here. While I do that, I want to play another video clip, and we're going to talk about having the finances and how the emotions of it plays.
Here. Children? Not yours, his. Oh.
Do you mind?
Oh, I'd love to meet them.
Come over here.
Hi, Daddy.
How are you?
Hi, Daddy.
Hi. I'm Allie.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen.
Mary Ellen. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Hi.
Hi.
Maggie.
Maggie, how are you? Hello there, honey.
Hi, Daviny.
What a pretty name.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my
gosh,
cute. Thank
yeah.
you. And who's this?
Edmund.
Hi, Edmund. I think I'll run on up and take my afternoon nap. Right?
Come on, honey.
There you go.
All right. Good.
I'll read some more later.
All right. Thank you. I'm so happy to meet y'all. Goodbye.
Nice to
Bye-bye.
meet you.
Goodbye.
Bye. She seems good today.
She is good. I don't know, there's something about today. Maybe it's a day for a miracle.
Daddy, come home. Mama doesn't know us. She doesn't recognize you. She'll never understand.
We miss you. This is crazy. You live in here?
Yeah. We'll all help with Mom. We can take shifts visiting.
Look, guys. That's my sweetheart in there. I'm not leaving her. This is my home now. Your mother is my home.
All right, so that's from The Notebook, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with that movie, but she had Alzheimer's. Uh-oh, hold on. You don't hear that? She had Alzheimer's, and she didn't remember him. She didn't remember anything. Those were her children. That was her family, and she didn't even recognize them anymore. And so they had to figure out how to deal with that and what that would look like in the future. All right, any other questions on that? I'm answering this other question. Can you have 2 powers of attorney, or would you suggest just one? I'm going to answer this one instead of typing it. You can have 2 co-powers of attorney. However, then you have to decide whether one signature is required, whether they have to agree on everything, and it gets hairy. I oftentimes, and Keith can chime in on this on what he does, but I'm all of the time request 1 power of attorney and at least 1 successor to them in the event that they cannot serve in the capacity as power of attorney.
Yeah, try not to do co-powers of attorney, and usually if there's one document, I'll do the succession. Where I've gotten questions is people that I've, in my experience, they'll have their spouse as the main power of attorney, and then they'll have, whether it's a sibling or some other person as the backup. And they'll say, if I have one document, does that backup person have the same powers if I give everything to my spouse? And I say, yes, because it's the same document. When they succeed as an agent, they're going to succeed to all those powers. So they get a little nervous because what they really want to do is give their spouse all the powers. And then if they have a successor agent, they want to give him or her limited powers in certain areas. So that's the only time I've actually done two separate forms where I'll just have the spouse have the power of attorney with everything. And then the second form might have the friend or the sibling with certain isolated powers that they want that person to have. So you can have two different actual forms and then have them have different powers that you're appointing, but you can't have two different advancce directives in Georgia. So once you make an advanced directive selection, if you make a new document, new advanced directive,
That's what the advanced directive is for medical, just
right, for medical. So for the financial side, you could have multiple, you don't want to, but you could have 4 or 5 out there floating if you wanted to. We don't recommend it, obviously. But power of attorney, you can have multiple forms. But like Shannon said, most of the time, you're just going to have one form with one person and then back up to that person. But you could have more than one power of attorney.
Right, right. Any other questions? I have one more clip that I want to share with you all before we wrap it up, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes from the movie Soul Food. And it goes directly to having these family meetings and what looks like and why you need to have them and who needs to be there and what can happen when you don't have them, and everyone has questions. So does anyone have any questions before we share that last clip? And then we're going to share our contact information with everyone. No questions? All right, let me see here. So this is the scene right after the grandson tricks everyone into coming to Sunday dinner, and they figure out that he's been lying to everyone, and he accidentally sets the house on fire.
Oh no. Oh.
I forgot. I left the towel on the stove. Oh my. Uncle Pete, oops, you all right? Oh, just got it all on your face. You didn't mean nothing. This is my surprise, everybody. Uncle Pete.
Uncle Pete? I'm sorry, man.
Look at this.
Snap. Oh!
Look at all this money. Big Mama really did have a pile of money hidden away. And she had it stashed in the last place we all think to look. Uncle Pete's TV. Now I understand what soul food was all about. See, during slavery, as black folks didn't have a whole lot to celebrate. So cooking became the way we expressed our love for one another. And that's what those Sunday dinners meant to us. More than just eating, it was a time for sharing our joys and sorrows. Something the old folks say is missing in today's families.
All right, so that one covers the finances of it, because if you remember, she was saying that she had some money, or everyone thought she had money. Well, the money was stored in Uncle Pete's TV, she cared for him when he got in his elder years, and he lived up in the bedroom and no one ever saw him. And the finances come in, it covers everything. And so having everything in place, having those meetings in place so that anyone and everyone can know what's going on, right? And so that there's no surprises, like we said earlier, having that meeting assures that there are no questions, there are no surprises, and everyone knows what's going on. So any questions before we wrap up? I think our time has kind of ticked away quite quickly. Appreciate all of you participating this evening. Any questions? Looking at my screen here. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, there's our
question, Shannon, for everybody. Is there anyone who's thinking about doing something for this next week is Thanksgiving? Is there anyone who has already planned to do something?
No, this is Stacy. My plan was for Christmas this year, where everybody would come back, where our daughter comes back from school. So we could all be here. But we also have 2 additional children, or my bonus daughters, as I call them. So we all need to come together. We have been already speaking about having this conversation some time ago, since we had a friend who passed away suddenly, and that just kind of made our eyes open to, hey, we need to make sure our affairs are in line. So I was talking to Trina, and she mentioned this seminar tonight. So I'm grateful for the invitation and for the both of you and all of your information. So we will be getting in contact with you.
excellent. Yeah, so often you just said something that so many people say. We've been talking about this for a long time. A lot of people have been talking about it for a long time, and it so often takes a tragedy or something happening to someone, a loved one, a family friend, that opens people's eyes and then makes it more important. So absolutely.
Right.
Love to hear that.
I just had one more question. I forgot to add this to the chat, but as you're having this meeting, we'll have this meeting at Christmas, like I said, I know we should probably write notes, but in the event that we're not able to, can we just like notarize it if we can't get in contact with you right away? If we notarize it, does that have any substance? And go, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why we say you're gonna have to coordinate your legal documents with the session, because particularly with the forms we're talking about, whether it's a trust or a power of attorney and this directive, those forms need to be specifically filled out, and then there's certain choices on there that you have to walk through probably an attorney with to know exactly how you're selecting it, just to make sure it coordinates with whatever you discuss. So just saying you had the meeting, just notes isn't gonna.
Okay, so have the meeting, take the notes, and immediately make your appointment with the estate planning with you.
Correct.
Right. It makes it easier. It makes it easier when you have it fresh in your mind to have those discussions with us. Both Keith and I will draw out the discussion from people, but when you've already had them and have certain ideas, it certainly helps aid the discussion. This is a topic that I always tell people, it is probably the least sexy area of the law, but it's also the only area of the law that everyone will need. Everyone. And so having the discussion is difficult enough. So that's why we are, we're trained to pull out the questions. People don't know what they don't have. People don't know what they need to be looking for. And that's where estate planning attorneys like Keith and myself come in to help aid that discussion.
Perfect.
Any other questions? All righty. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm just making sure we didn't miss anything in the chat window as far as questions. And it doesn't look like we did. So I encourage everyone, reach out to Keith or myself, schedule a consultation. We can only answer certain questions on here. Believe me, this participation in this workshop does not create an attorney-client relationship. However, we would love to have a consultation with you, get to know you all personally so that we can potentially have that relationship with you so that you can create your legacy and have a plan in place, and it will make those family meetings easier. Join us again next month where we're going to continue the discussion with regard to family meetings. Today we talked about the lifetime planning. Next month we're going to talk about how to plan for and what to look for as far as planning goes for after death.
And just, thank you again for joining us. And I know the holidays coming up, and even if you don't have anything planned right now, you can start, stoking the fires and warming it up and setting it up for for Christmas or maybe New Year's or some other time. So hopefully we at least got you thinking of some ideas and maybe the people that you want to approach about being a part of that. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing all of you next month on the 15th.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Y'all have a great evening and a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays. Be safe out there, everyone.